How's it going, everyone? Nick Mo here, and I've had the pleasure of spending lots of quality time with the recently released PlayStation VR, and I must say I've come away quite impressed. I had a feeling going into my experiences with PSVR that sequences like the chase scene in London Heist would be eye-opening for me, but what I did not expect was to be blown away by a basic platforming game. Some are calling it PSVR's hidden killer app, while others are calling it a taste of things to come. If you haven't heard, this is Robot Rescue. It's a mini-game found within the free-to-download Playroom VR application, and it demonstrates just how well a platforming game can work in VR. If you have a PlayStation VR at home, I want you to pause this video and go play through Robot Rescue and then come back. There isn't much to spoil, but part of the charm is discovering how the game works your first time through. For those without a PSVR, I want to show you why Robot Rescue has me excited for the future of platforming games in VR. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. Platforming games have had a rocky start in virtual reality. The most prominent release so far was Lucky's Tale on the Oculus Rift, and that game was met with a mixed response at best. There's also the nagging issue of motion sickness. Anytime you're in VR and the camera moves without you expecting to, it can cause discomfort, and that's a challenge for developers. But somehow, Sony appears to have cracked the code. Part of the reason why Robot Rescue works as well as it does is how it locks the camera to a single path and allows the level to evolve around that path. Rather than having a camera position that moves up, down, and side to side, the camera position in Robot Rescue only moves forward at a set height, and it only does so when your character is pushing forward. Otherwise, the camera position sits still, and it allows you to look around freely. This makes the game very comfortable to play. I'll admit, the first time my position shifted forward, my brain immediately felt as if I was sliding, but I quickly got used to it, and in minutes, it was second nature. In fact, the whole setup reminds me a lot of the original Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1. Naughty Dog had a challenge to render a detailed 3D space and keep the players on track. To solve this challenge, they utilized fixed camera positioning, and the game immediately clicked with players. The same is true of Robot Rescue. It's easy to understand, yet detailed enough to keep you interested. This balance of simplicity and detail reminds me a lot of Nintendo's 3D platforming games, and if Sony can capture even an ounce of that in a future title, it would make for one heck of a game. The second thing Robot Rescue does very well is connecting you, the player, to the world around you, allowing you to interact with the environment and characters in meaningful ways, and it makes the experience just as immersive as a realistic first-person game. For example, you can use your controller to make a tightrope for your character to walk across. At no point does the game tell you what you can and can't do with this tightrope, but the nature of the game makes you want to experiment. Suddenly, you find yourself bouncing the tightrope up and down thanks to the full motion tracking, and voila, your character is soaring through the air like a circus performer. And wouldn't you know, you've discovered some secret bonuses up there, rewarding your experimentation. It's subtle, but you feel like you're actually inside this colorful space because you're discovering new ways to interact with this world's inhabitants. Speaking of secrets, one of my favorite moments in the game was when I crossed through a tight cave. If you've never experienced VR before, it might be hard to picture, but the walls of the cave were so close, I felt like I could reach out and touch them. And so I tried, and when I did, my perspective shifted. I suddenly realized that I had been sitting in my chair static the entire time, and I could actually move around to see things from a new perspective. I leaned around corners, I peered into little caves, and I discovered more secrets. It was incredibly rewarding. It felt as if I had actually found something. I could have just as easily walked straight past these things, but my exploration was rewarded. That big sense of exploration is why so many people have been blown away by a relatively small minigame in Robot Rescue. Unlike conventional platformers, it's less about precise jumping and combat, and more about interacting with your character and the environment in new and interesting ways. As I finished the game, I knew there were secrets that I missed, and it made me want to return to discover more. I don't want to give everything away, so for those who have yet to play it, I'll leave you with this. I hope developers of all sizes take note of what Sony has accomplished with Robot Rescue. Platforming is a genre of games that I thought would receive no benefit from VR, and yet here I am incredibly excited for what's to come. Robot Rescue is proof that if you nail the camera system and create an interesting world to explore, there's no reason why platformers can't find a home in VR headsets. Also, if this small experience is anything to go by, platformers in VR have a bright future. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Reddit PSVR community. If you have a headset or you're interested in getting one, please go check out the sub. They are a super supportive group of players, and I will leave a link in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I plan on doing more VR coverage in the near future, and if you're interested about life outside the headset, or more specifically about Nintendo's next home console, check out my previous video.